side.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kent with Bent 220, the Kent before time, where Kent is in fact a tree star, which is weird because I like tree stars, but not so much Kent. But whatever. Look, it was that or try to replace one of the dinosaur faces with his. And let me tell you, I was on a bit of a time crunch making that thumbnail, and I was not going to try and replace like Littlefoot with Kent's face. Like,
That's reasonable.
Yeah. So, how is everybody? Bent, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm definitely doing better than I was last week.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, last week was that was rough. Yeah, that's why I was drinking ginger beer, which does not have alcohol, which is something that I had to tell Bent about. Remember that it took me like feels like it was like a month to get you to realize that no, ginger beer doesn't have alcohol in it.
I don't remember most of that month, so...
Well,
maybe.
Okay. All right, well, we are here to continue talking about Kent Hovind, who is currently doing his CSE 102 classes 7 and 8. For those of you who don't know, his CSE 101, 102, and I think it goes all the way to like 104, is a group of classes he taught that allegedly were accepted for credit in certain like fundamentalist Baptist colleges, which is just horrifying to me that that's a thing that happened. But I don't get to be in charge of that, I guess. But yeah, so it's basically his seminars, but like several times longer, and he goes into much more depth about like why he thinks the things that he thinks. It's a whole thing, right? And so we are currently, he just left off talking about, or he's still talking about Charles Lyell, and how Charles Lyell, by the way, a lifelong Christian who believed in Noah's flood, as far as I can tell, till his dying day, hated the Bible, and he wanted to get rid of the Bible. And Kent gave us some quotations that didn't say any such thing, but that he cherry-picked because he could construe them to say those things. So, you know. As to Velociraptor Ryu for $5 says AIG is a bag of the thing which apparently Andrew Hall shoots when thinking of static electricity boops. Whew. Yeah, okay, we'll take a drink for that. We'll get into the drinking rules in just a second, but oh my goodness. For those of you who don't know, if you are a channel member or a patron, you have early access to my videos, and I just uploaded a video today in which Andrew Hall of the Thunderbolts Project is telling us all about his theories about electricity in Egypt. And spoiler alert, it's basically just a thinly veiled excuse for him to talk about his e-stim fetish. So, yeah, that becomes pretty obvious. Pretty about halfway through, it becomes pretty clear that's probably what's going on. Then once you get to like 3/4 of the way through, you're like, oh no, that's exactly what's happening right now. Yeah, that's that's it. Now Bitcourse says AIG and then more Japanese, and I'm going to try to read. But then also AIG is a bag of dicks. So we're going to take a drink. Thank you very much. Oh, and Bitcourse, of course, has been a member and is at the Tetrapod level. Members for 7 months. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the drinking rules. So on Tuesdays, we play a drinking game. Now, if you want to participate, you are absolutely welcome to play with whatever beverage you want, alcohol or no, or some people have played with vape pens, or just, I mean, I don't care, eat a popcorn kernel every time we say drink if you want to play or something. It doesn't matter, right? You don't have to play. You definitely don't have to play with alcohol. I am playing with a gin and tonic. There you go. Bent, what are you playing with?
Tea. And water flavoring, so I have a strawberry lemonade over here.
Okay.
And then on this side, I have a blackberry citrus.
There you go. All right. So
no alcohol. Indeed.
Oh, hey, Landon Knowles in chat. Hello, Landon.
Hi, Landon.
So we'll go over the drink triggers, though. Now, you've already seen a couple of them. One is that, I guess you've seen one of them. One is that if you super chat or milestone chat anything to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks, we'll take a drink. The reason for this, for those of you who might be new, is that they like to copyright claim anything that has just a bit of their footage in it. I've been hit by it. Erica's been hit by it. Vice Rhino's been hit by it. I know Godless Engineer's been hit by it. I think Paul from Paulo G has been hit by it. Pretty sure Stated Clearly has been hit by it. I don't know about Logix. I think so, but I haven't asked him. I guess I could. I don't know. I don't talk to Logic all that often. I guess I don't really talk to most of those people all that often. It's mostly Erica is the big one I talk to out of those. But yeah, so for that reason, yeah, whenever you super chat or milestone chat anything to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks, we take a drink. Which, for example, Too Young to Feel This Old for $5 US says AIG is a big bag of dogs and creepy kegs, and you see the first letter in each of those words spells out dicks with also the S at the end of kegs. So there you go. We'll take a drink. If I can find out where my drink counter is, there we go. Awesome. Okay, another way that you guys can do that is if you super chat or milestone chat and you use one of the kaiju emojis. Now we have 3 kaiju emojis. We have Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. And any super chat that includes any of those will, in fact, get a drink for us. Or milestone chat, it's also there. Now, you have to be a channel member to get those emojis. We have some very fancy emojis. We've got a dapper emoji, a tetrapod emoji, a cool top hat, Kent, my co-host Vishanti. We got Murphy, who's a goblin character that Chesh came up with. We got those kaiju. We've got some Klingon stuff. We got bingos. We got fwings, tunicats of both pelagic and benthic varieties. Yeah, as DM Confederates Kill Pterodactyl's Wing points out, who's been a member for 15 months, by the way. Thank you very much. And it's at the annual level. Yeah, we got membership benefits. Yeah. So you have to be a member to do those. But also, if you gift memberships, we will take a drink for each membership that is gifted. So that is one of the options under the little $ where you can super chat. There's also a gift memberships. So for each membership gifted, we will take 1 drink up to a limit. If you do like 30 or more, I'm just going to finish my drink, add that number to the drink counter, and then, go get another drink. We're not going to count out specifically like 30 or 50 drinks or something, because I think someone did once give 50 memberships, didn't they?
I think so.
Yeah, and I'm not going to count out 50 individual drinks. That would take forever. But those are the ways that you guys can get us a drink. But most of the drink triggers actually come from Kent. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, it is true that none of those ways to make us drink are free, and that is because if they were, I feel like people would just send nothing but ways to make us drink, and then I would die. And I'm hoping to not die in the near future.
Please don't die.
Yeah. Heather Kuhn for $5 says, apparently Super Chat doesn't like links, but Lyle's books are available from Project Gutenberg. Yes, that is correct. Lyle's books are all public domain, so you can just get them online. It's kind of like Edgar Allan Poe or most of H.P. Lovecraft. Anyway, so if Kent says something that's too stupid and it kind of burns my brain, I'll call a drink trigger just to cool the brain down. However, if Kent actually gets something right and it isn't just him reading a quote from someone, if he actually has a correct thought that he expresses himself, we'll take a drink for that. Now, Tiktaalik for 100 Argentinian pesos says, I hate it when I come to a live stream late because of late notifications. Is like YouTube managed by AIG? YouTube, I'm just kidding. Really, but I really need to be. Oh, sorry, I really need an excuse to say that. Yeah, it's YouTube notifications are kind of trash. Your friendly atheist, who's been a member for 8 months, is at the tetrapod level. Says, remember, have fun and avoid alcohol poisoning. Oh, I keep it pretty carefully calibrated so as to avoid alcohol poisoning. Yeah. So, let's see. Oh, right, Kent. So if Kent tells a joke that doesn't land or tells a story that didn't happen, we'll take a drink. So, for instance, if Kent tells a story about how he had a wonderful conversation with a Berkeley professor on an airplane, but in fact, it's more likely that that was a conversation that he imagined with his shampoo bottle, yeah, we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if Bent or I can successfully predict what's coming next, where it's not clear what's coming next. Let's say prediction. We'll also take a drink anytime Kent Hovind mentions the National Socialist German Workers' Party or the various prominent members thereof or their historically significant activities in the just at the 20th century generally. Take a drink for that. If you don't know what the NSDAP is, feel free to Google it. I'm trying to stay monetized here, so I'm not going to say it. We will also take a drink anytime that Kent mentions a source, and we check the source, and not only does it fail to support him, but it actively contradicts his claim. That's called Trojan source. This probably won't happen today, but if Kent confuses Lucy for a wider group of organisms and it pretends that she just represents like her whole species or a whole genus, rather than just being one individual of the species, we call that ad hominid. We get 1 drink for that per stream. We'll also take a drink. I feel like I'm missing something. Bent, help me out.
Did you mention if we get prediction?
Yep. Oh, Godzilla. Godzilla can come by audibly. We'll take a drink for that. There it is.
I think that's the last one then.
Okay. Well then, in that case, here we go. Let's see more from Kent, again talking about Charles Lyell.
Most scientists in this time were Christians.
At least in Europe. Let's remember that, there were... before that, there had been the Islamic Golden Age, in which a lot of people who could reasonably now be called scientists were Muslims. And there have always... Oh, goodness. More Godzilla. Also, throughout the medieval period into the modern period, both the Islamic and the Christian worlds, there were also a lot of Jewish people doing a lot of research, doing a lot of translation, doing what we would now call science. That word hadn't been really invented yet, but it's not true to just say the scientists at the time were just Christian, right? There's a long history of other groups of people doing a lot of science. Also, a lot of what we now consider just general math was figured out by various Brahmic mathematicians over in India. So that includes Hindu, Buddhists, Jains, stuff like that. So, yeah, but still, a lot of what we now call science started being formalized in Europe mostly by Christians. So he's I don't know. My goodness, another Godzilla. This is the most Godzilla we've had in months. So I don't know, he's 65% right or something like that. Again? Goodness. All right, here we go.
They thought science got along just fine with the Bible.
I mean, you can still think that, right? I'm not here to tell you how to interpret the Bible, but if you interpret the Bible in a way that contradicts science, then, it's your interpretation of the Bible that probably needs to give way, because our confidence in science is always going to be higher than our confidence in your particular interpretation of the Bible, because we can verify the science. We can just go and check. It's a lot harder to go and check with the Bible, right? We'll check right now. Hey, God, if Kent is right, please produce wine in my glass instead of gin and tonic. I don't have any wine, so either Kent is wrong or God just isn't into answering my prayers like that. And I don't know how to tell the difference. I know Kent is wrong, but,
Lyell said he wanted to free science from Moses.
He did say that, yep. And he meant specifically he wanted to free it from literalist interpretations of Genesis and just the Torah generally. And despite that, he remained a lifelong believer in a global flood. He just knew that he couldn't find evidence for it, and so he thought that the flood was so tranquil that it didn't leave any geological evidence, which is a bit far-fetched, but,
In other words, get rid of this idea of a flood and a creation.
No, he did not want to get rid of that idea of the creation, because again, lifelong Christian, he believed in a creation. He didn't know how long ago it was, because as he said, the earth was indistinguishable from being infinitely old, because he couldn't find a basement stratum in the earth that was didn't have evident previous history. Now, Hank says for $6.66 dues, says AIG are a packed up passel of perfidious professional peggernicks. Godzilla.png. All right, well, we will take a drink for that. Okay, here we go.
Put millions of years in here. That's what Lyell wanted to do. Okay, scientists who thought that Archbishop Usher's estimate, or even 10 times this, was an immense length of time, were in for a rude shock when they started looking closely at the solid part of the earth. Oh, there's another backhanded stab at the Bible. In other words, yeah, you might believe the Bible's true, but when you really look at science, you'll find out it's not.
No, that's not what's being said. What's being said is that Bishop Ussher's estimation that he based on the Bible, that are in no way incumbent on people who believe the Bible, were wrong in the face of the physical evidence. And that is a correct statement. See, one of the things, and I was actually talking about this earlier off air, the creationists like to think that they have a monopoly on the proper interpretation of the Bible. Sorry, I just don't see how that's the case, right? There are many, many other people who believe in the Bible. There are Christians, various Jewish groups, at least when we're talking about the Hebrew scriptures, right, that all have different interpretations that do not require us to accept Bishop Ussher's calculations of the earth being about 6,000 years old. It's just not a thing. You can, I guess, accept it. I mean, you'll be wrong if you do, but not everyone has to.
And there are professors today that do the same thing to their students. They're going to say, oh, you believe the Bible, huh? Well, by the time you get done with this class, we'll show you the truth.
I mean, I guess there's the Kevin Sorbo professor from God's Not Dead. I've never actually had that happen with a real professor. Bent of you?
Yeah, none of my professors ever said anything remotely close to that.
Okay. Anyone who has had a professor tell them that if they believe in the Bible, they won't by the end of this class, please tag me in chat and let me know, because I have yet to find anyone who's ever had that experience in college. It seems like it's just like a scare tactic that creationists come up with, and that's why it ended up on PureFlix. Goopdo3, there we go, for $5 says, I was going to say you need to give God a super chat, but that's just indulgences. Yeah. To be fair, even the Catholic Church is no longer selling indulgences. You can still get an indulgence, you just can't get it for money. You have to get it for things like charity work or pilgrimages or things like that, right? So yeah, they do still have indulgences that you can get. You just can't just directly pay for them.
That's just the attitude they have. That science doesn't go along with Scripture, but it certainly...
I mean, it's certainly some people's attitude.
It does. Lyell, in the early 1800s, developed, along with some other fellas, he developed the geologic column.
That's roughly correct. We'll take a drink. Yeah, he did. Good job, Kent.
How many have ever heard of the geologic column before?
Oh, okay. Now, this isn't a drinking rule or anything, but it is a general rule. When Kent asks a question of his audience, I have to ask the same question. Okay. Have you heard of the geologic column? We got yes, we got no, and of course, we got turtle. All right.
Nice.
Feel free to vote. And for $5, Savage Cobra, the cursorial angiosperm. Okay. Says AIG is a bag of things Kent blathers on about whale pelvis's anchoring. Or is there whale pelvis anchoring? Yes. Yes, they are. We'll take a drink. Let's see. Fear recursive electrons monger says the worst I ever had was a professor casually saying how stupid climate change denial is, which was a slap in the face. I needed to actually look into it and change my mind. Yeah, I mean, that seems like a fair thing for a professor to say. It's like, yeah, climate change denialism is stupid, which it very obviously is. I mean, I feel like we've had the hottest summer on record several years in a row. Yep. So...
That's true.
Yeah. And I don't just mean here, where I'm sitting. I mean the globe. Because you could have like a local place that just has a heat wave for years. But when it's the globe, yeah, pelvis is the valid plural for pelvis as far as I know. I just said pelvises because, I don't know, I'm dumb.
This was the time when they divided the earth up into layers, Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archaeozoic, and all this stuff.
No, it's when they named the layers that are evidently already there, right? They didn't invent the layers. The layers are physically present. There are layers of the earth that are characterized by particular fossil assemblages. That's an objective fact. You can physically go out and look at it.
I don't think Kent's ever gone and looked at it
No, I don't think so either.
for himself.
But what isn't an objective fact is what labels we put on this, right? And they didn't just name these periods. They also named like epochs and smaller, which are bigger, and then smaller like stages, right? So like there's the There's the Proterozoic, the Phanerozoic, which is where we are now. And then within that, there's the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, the Cenozoic, which is where we are now. Then within that, there's, there's like the Jurassic period, but that has subsections that are called stages. Like, I think the Tithonian is a Jurassic stage. So, yeah.
They further divided it into different periods like the Jurassic, the Cretaceous, Jurassic, Triassic. Each of these names, most of these names, comes from a section in England.
That's not too far off. Well, I'm not going to take a drink for it because like the Jurassic obviously isn't. Those are from the Jura Mountains, which aren't in England. But like, there's a pretty heavy bias towards England, mostly because the first people who were systematizing stratigraphy were English. So, when you're the first people who get around to some scientific endeavor, you tend to get to name the things in that scientific endeavor. So,
like the Devonian, for instance. There's a Devonshire, England. I believe it's called Devonshire.
Yep.
And they named it after that section.
True.
Most of the names come from a section of England where they were digging around finding these layers of, chalk or something. Cretaceous, Cretia means Latin for chalk. And so they find a layer of chalk and they call that the Chalk Age.
Yeah, he's actually right about that, so we'll take a drink for that. That is why Cretaceous layers, or the Cretaceous is called that, is because in England a lot of the Cretaceous deposits are chalky. As to Velociraptor Ryu for 1069, nice, says July of this year was the hottest month in the entire current Milankovitch cycle, if I recall correctly. But no, anthropogenic climate change isn't real, apparently. Mothra. And we'll take a drink for the Mothra. So, by the way, some places, like I know that the Android app is really bad about the channel emojis. And so if I see someone who is a channel member who's attempting to use one of the emojis and it just fails because YouTube sometimes is like that, we do take a drink for it. Okay. Here we go.
The Cretaceous Age. I don't know what the rest of them mean, but you can look it up in any dictionary. But
I'm actually not going to fault him for that. I don't think most like geologists or paleontologists could tell you what every single one of those things is named for. Because, like, it doesn't really matter. So
each of these layers was assigned, during this 1800s, a name, an age, and an index fossil.
Wrong. Let's take a drink. That is really, really bad. So, they were not assigned absolute ages, right? No one at the time was saying, well, the Jurassic period is between this many million years ago and this many million years ago. Why? Because they didn't know. They were assigned relative ages. So people knew that, like, the Cretaceous was younger than the Jurassic, which was younger than the Triassic, which was younger than the Permian, which was younger than the Devonian, and so on. But they did not get ages. And also, it is not the case that each one of these has a single index fossil. So what an index fossil is it is a fossil that has to meet two requirements. It has to be very wide in distribution geographically. So it has to have basically be found more or less worldwide. And two, it has to have a very narrow temporal extent or vertical extent. So it's only found in very specific layers, but in those layers, it's found all over the place. Now, no one period like the Jurassic has a single index fossil. There are multiple index fossils that correspond to different parts of the Jurassic, say. And so it is not the case that that is simply a, one and done. The Jurassic period has this one index fossil. Now, the index fossils are basically guidelines for in the field. So you're in the field and you have some previously unidentified rock and you say, okay, well, is there any index fossils? Okay, fine. You find an index fossil for like the Cenomanian stage of, I think that's the Cretaceous. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember all the stages. You're like, okay, it's the Cenomanian stage index fossil. Cool. So you stick that label on it for now. But then later, what you do is you check other strata below and above. You do any radiometric dating you can. You check to see if this strata correlates with another stratum elsewhere. Because there's always a chance that the index fossil is actually not where you would expect. And you found a new vertical extent of the index fossil. The index fossil is never the final stay in how old a rock layer is. It's what you use to get a starting point to work from and build from in the field. So Kent, I'm almost positive, is about to tell us how, they get this age of the rocks from the fossils and they get the age of the fossils from the rocks. That's just not true. So.
How many saw the movie Jurassic Park, named after the Jurassic layer?
Okay, well, now we have to close this poll and ask a new poll. Okay, so we'll start a new poll. Now, by the way, have you heard of the geologic column? 70% yes, turtle 29%, and 0 with no percent, and that was with 72 votes. So thank you very much. Have you seen the movie Jurassic Park, named after the Jurassic layer? Yes, no, and then we'll have... Oh, I forgot turtle. Sorry about that. My bad. I went to click add, but then I went too far down and I hit start poll. Sorry about that. Yeah, so there you go.
Did they have that in Ukraine, Jurassic Park movie?
I'm pretty sure Jurassic Park made it to Ukraine, Kent. What does he think Ukraine is? Like, the middle of the Congo or something? Goodness.
Did you see this? No? Oh, scary movie. Did you see it, Tanya?
Is it? Did you find it scary? I saw it.
No.
Yeah, I saw it when
It's
it
not
came out.
scary.
I mean, there were some tense parts, but I wouldn't call it scary.
You haven't seen it either? I think we have it. You can take it home and watch it. You'd enjoy that.
I'm kind of surprised Kent has it. I would think that he wouldn't like it because of how heavily it just assumes science is real.
Right.
The layers then were assigned an age and a name and an index fossil. Now this
Again, no, but we already talked about it.
is very important. This was all done during the early 1800s.
It was preliminarily done then. Since then, more work has been done. It's not like after the 1800s, stratigraphy just, like, fossilized.
This geologic...
Oh, Off Journey sending the first super chat for the channel. Thank you very much, Off Journey, for $2. Says AIG is a dangerous donkey load of dangling dipsticks. Very nice. I'm taking a ring for that. Thank you very much for your first super chat here on the channel. I really do appreciate it. Although, you know, I was hoping at some point to get to another emoji, and we have a ways to go on that. Need a lot more members.
column is the Bible for the evolutionist.
No. There is... Okay. The evolutionist is not a religion, and it doesn't have a Bible. The geologic column is a model. So, it is a way to orient yourself through the vertical extent of geology and through the timeline of the Earth. It is a construct that simplifies down what we actually see in the rocks so that you can make relatively easy predictions about what you will find in different places, and you can easily identify what you have found when you go out into the field. It's not a book. It's not believed in by faith because, again, even other young Earth creationists besides Kent acknowledge that the geological column objectively does exist, right? The model actually tells you things about the rocks, and the rocks confirm predictions made by the model. Now, those young Earth creationists, which would include like Kurt Wise, disagree about the timeline involved, but it's simply undeniable that when you go out into the world, the rocks are stratified, and certain fossil assemblages occur in certain orders. And even if you're missing a few layers, right? So like, let's say you go to a place where it has like an Ordovician and a Devonian and a Permian layer, but no Triassic layer, but there's a Jurassic layer, no Cretaceous layer, but then there's like a, Paleogene layer, and then no Miocene layer, but there's going to be an Eocene layer. They're still going to go in the same order. And if they're not in the right order, you'll be able to find evidence of like uplift and tilting in the rocks, which means that what you're actually looking at is not the original direction of deposition. So once you correct for that, again, they're back in the right order. That's just an objective fact about the world.
It can only be found one place in the world. The only place you can find the geologic column is in the textbooks.
I mean, that's not actually true. Kent Hovind himself later has actually pointed out areas that have essentially unbroken geological records. It's not very common, but it does happen here and there. But even if it were true, it's like saying the periodic table is made up nonsense. The only place you're going to find it is in the textbook. It's like, well, technically that's basically true, right? You don't go out into nature. Oh, drink for Mothra. Right, like if I go out into nature, I'm not going to find like a bunch of well-ordered atoms all in columns and rows arranged by like atomic number and like outer valent shell electron availability. Like, that's not going to be a thing I find in nature. But does that mean that there's just no point in the periodic table of the elements? Well, of course not. It tells us something important about how the elements work. Right? Like, elements, it tells us how heavy they are. It tells us, based on which column they're in, what basic kinds of chemical properties they're going to have. That's an important thing. But yeah, because apparently I'm not going to go out and find it in nature just existing as a table that invalidates it, it doesn't make any sense.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah, it is. I would agree.
In the textbooks, they talk about, here's an earth science textbook.
Only 49 likes and 102 people watching.
Uh-oh.
That means that I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve, so please hit like. Because it really hurts my feelings when people haven't hit like. I mean, unless you hate this place, in which case, I guess hit dislike. I can't tell you what to do.
About how, during the Cenozoic and Mesozoic and Paleozoic era, they've got it all figured out, like, wow, this is, millions of years old, and it's just simple baloney. The geologic column cannot be found in the world. Most places are missing about 70% of the geologic column.
I actually don't know if that's right, but it doesn't sound unreasonable. Yeah.
No place in the world contains all the geologic column in the right order.
He's going to disagree with himself later on in life, but maybe he hasn't done it yet. As to Velociraptor Ryu says, for $2, hit like or my next super chat will be Bilbo. I actually kind of am wondering what the Bilbo super chat's going to be.
Now, one professor I debated said, Mr. Hovind, we've got 26 places where we found the geologic column in order. I said, no, what you mean is you've got 26 places where you found the fossils in order that you expected.
That's kind of the same thing.
It's so dumb.
Yeah, I'm going to take a drink for that.
That's really stupid.
What else would you be looking for?
That's all. This textbook admits, if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists.
Okay, let's read the whole thing. If there were a column of sediments deposited continuously since the formation of the Earth, the entire history of the planet could be reconstructed. Okay, so it's not just there isn't any column of sediments. It's there isn't one that was continuously deposited since the formation of the Earth. There are columns of sediments, according to this. Unfortunately, no such column, no column of continuous deposition exists. Where sediments are missing, a break in the sedimentary record occurs. Breaks result in gaps in the record that may range from a few years to hundreds of millions of years. Breaks in the sedimentary record are called unconformities. I just love that he will put up on screen the fact that he's quote mining.
Is that a Trojan source?
Ooh. Yeah, let's go for it. Let's call it a Trojan source. I'm going to drink for it. I don't even care. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that's a Trojan source. Also, I love that he's once again citing like textbooks for babies. Doesn't bother to cite an actual scientific paper. No. Yeah, Bitcores also agrees that this is a Trojan source, or says, "Is this a Trojan source?" Yeah, no, I'm counting it.
Is.
Yeah.
There is no geologic column, so that'll be a quiz question. Where can you find the geologic column? In the textbook.
Yep, just like the periodic table. That doesn't make it fake.
The only place it exists. Now, it is true the Earth has many layers. That's not the question. I've been to Grand Canyon and Royal Gorge, and remember Royal Gorge? We fired the airplane off of there, flew down for about 4 miles. I've been to lots of these canyons, been to all 50 states now, and I've been to Snake River Valley in Idaho a couple months ago. There's no question the Earth has layers. The question is, how did it get that way? Now, I want you to look at these layers in Grand Canyon and answer this question. If each of these layers is a different age, don't you think there'd be some erosion marks in between the layers?
Yes, I do, actually. So let's take a look at... I've mentioned this before, but it's one of my favorite examples. Okay, so let me see what I can find in terms of the images. So we are going to talk about Surprise Canyon. So we'll talk about Grand Canyon too. Let's see if I can... Surprise Canyon, Grand Canyon. Here we go. Yeah, this is a pretty good one. Okay, so when this is in the tab, you're gonna have to give me a second. Why is it so small? Doesn't matter. It's fine. Let's forgive me for going to a Tumblr blog, but this is the best image I could find on short notice. So give me just a second while I switch over to my main monitor. Okay, cool. So you got the red wall limestone, the abrechia pipe, which is an igneous formation, right? And then we've got the supine group, which is the top layers. So this is the Grand Canyon. Now, the Surprise Canyon formation is itself a paleo canyon that cross-cuts the Grand Canyon and cuts into lower layers, and itself is infilled with a lot of things. One of the big ones is what's called the Surprise Canyon conglomerate group. That right there is a paleo canyon. Now, Bent, I think, help me out with this.
Okay.
Are canyons features of erosion, or are they when rocks get added to things? I can't remember. Does rock go away to form a canyon, or do you add rock to form a canyon?
I think it goes away.
Okay. All right. So if that means that if you have a canyon with an old canyon in it, that old canyon would have had to erode some of the rocks before the new canyon formed, right?
Yes.
So would that count as an erosion mark?
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. That's how easy it is to prove that, yes, there are, in fact, erosion marks. That's it. That's all it takes.
I'm such a good guesser.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. So, yeah, sorry, Kent. That's just a thing that occurs in places on the Earth. Also, any unconformity is almost certainly going to have some erosion occurring. In fact, one of the reasons why the layers, or the interfaces between layers in the geological column tend to be very flat is because erosion wearing down the relief on the layer below, so that the layer above was deposited in a relatively flat area. Okay, we've got a few more super chats. Asta Velociraptor Ryu for $10 says, since I was asked for the Bilbo, I guess, sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you. Not today, good morning, but please come to tea anytime you like. Why not tomorrow? Goodbye. Which is a great Bilbo quote. I like it. It's from The Hobbit, whereas mine was from the Lord of the Rings. Savage Cobra, the cursorial angiosperm, says, I'll take what's an unconformity for $200. Yeah, that's exactly. My Unfinished Journey says, should an alt account for making a false first super chat be a drink trigger? No, but I'm still going to thank the alt account. And Zooting, giving their first super chat for the channel at $5, says, in order to include scientific papers, he would have to read scientific papers. He's doing his best, bless his heart. See, I disagree, because I know of a lot of creationists who cite scientific papers, but who have clearly not read those scientific papers. That's, in fact, a very common occurrence. Yeah, I actually know of that happening all over the place. So, yeah.
I mean, if the top layer sat there for 4 million years waiting for the next one, why aren't there some erosion marks in between the layers?
There are. That's often what you call an unconformity, and it's why they tend to be very, very flat, Kent. We're just going to take a drink for Kent not knowing what to look for to find what he's asked for, despite the fact that it's ubiquitous.
And then lying about it.
Tectonic for 100 Argentinian peso says, talking about Bilbo, is the president of AIG called the Lord of the Dicks? I am officially approving anyone to call Ken Ham Lord of the Dicks. And we're going to take a drink for it. Very nice.
So one of the quiz questions will be, what are some ways to show that the layers of Earth are not vastly different in ages?
I guess lying about erosion between the layers is one of them, apparently.
How do we know those two layers right on top of each other are not millions of years apart, even though the textbook says they are? Well, one way we know is there are no erosion marks between them.
Again, except when there are, which is a lot of the time.
Another way we know is we find polystrata fossils.
Ooh, is he going to talk about that whale? If he talks about that whale, we take a drink.
Poly means many, P-O-L-Y. Strata, S-T-R-T-A, S-T-R-A-T-A. Polystrata fossils.
Yeah, he tried. Look, I'm still very confident that Kent is more or less functionally illiterate. So, you know.
Are fossils that run through many different layers, and I'll show you pictures of those in just a minute. See, the layers were really formed during the flood. If you take a jar of dirt and shake it up, put some water in it, shake it up and set it down, it'll settle out just like this. You get gravel goes to the bottom, and then sand, and then silt, and then clay.
He's right. Let's take a drink. Okay, so let's talk about that, though. So what he has just done is formed a graded bedding, right? It's a bedding because it's a bed of sediment, right? And it's graded because it goes from largest, most dense to smallest. Now, why is it graded that way? Well, you've probably heard of Brownian motion. Bent, you know about Brownian motion, right?
A little bit.
Now, here's an example. Ever had a hot cup of tea, and then you put a little bit of sugar in it, and as the sugar crystals go down and they start dissolving, right, they start to kind of dance around, move sort of semi-randomly as they go down into the cup, right? You've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
That's Brownian motion. Basically, what temperature is a measure of the random kinetic energy of the molecules in a system. So when something is hot, and by that I just mean like not absolute zero, the atoms are just kind of bouncing around. Now, they can hit things and cause them to change their momentum. The smaller something is, the more Brownian motion is going to affect something. And now, sometimes Brownian motion occurs when a molecule of whatever substance, in this case water, actually ends up moving up. And that's about as likely as any other direction in terms of Brownian motion. So the smaller a piece of sediment is, the more likely it is that gravity is going to effectively be weaker compared to Brownian motion. So if you were to drop, say you had that same hot cup of tea, right? And we're going to drop a few different things into it. Like, let's say you drop your car key into it. It's going to sink right down, right? There's going to be, like, no Brownian motion is going to be obvious. But, like we said with the little crystals of sugar, it's going to be more obvious. If you put in tiny bits of dust, they might not sink down in the course of days it might take them, right? So what happens with sediment is the same thing. The bigger and heavier the sediment is, the easier it is to overcome Brownian motion and sink to the bottom. So when you take a bunch of random assorted sediment, shake it up, like happens in a flood, you get a sorting by grain size. So if the entire geological record of the Earth, or even a significant portion of it, were made by a global flood, we should expect one globally extensive layer of graded bedding, where it goes from biggest and densest at the bottom to lightest and smallest at the top in terms of grain size. But we don't find that. Instead, we can find sandstone, which has a higher grain size than, say, shale, but we can find it above shale. In fact, we find that in the Grand Canyon. The Bright Angel Shale, which has a very small grain size, is near the bottom of the Grand Canyon, whereas the Coconino Sandstone is near the top of the Grand Canyon. That can't occur in a flood, because in a flood, you do in fact get like gravel, followed by sand, followed by like shale, followed by like silt and things like that. So what Kent is describing is in fact what would happen in a flood. So we'll take a drink for him getting that right. What he's wrong about, though, is that that's what we see in the world. Oh, Borg Emporia, I'm more entertaining than the current MC Toon stream. Well, thank you very much. I have noticed that MC Toon and I, unfortunately, are almost always in competition, and he wins every single time. So that's okay, though. I don't begrudge it. In fact, I sometimes go back and watch the streams afterwards. So, his streams, that is. I don't watch these back very often. Basically, almost never.
And then very slowly, the fine particles end up on top, because they're going to float around in the water for hours till they finally land. During the flood of Noah, you get the very same sorting process. We get into lots more on that on video number 6.
Except again, Kent, that's not what actually happens in the Earth.
I was preaching in Union Center, South Dakota years ago. Marlissa, you would have been about 10?
Marlissa is his daughter, whom he performed the marriage ceremony for, that ended up on America's Funniest Home Videos because he decided to take a phone call in the middle of the wedding ceremony, which is a weird thing to do. But hey.
It's weird.
12 years, that's right, 12 years old. Union Center is right there. You can't even find it on the map. 40 people in the whole town. 38 of them came to church. We had a revival, man, turned up the whole town. I don't know where the other two were. Out pulling a calf, I bet. But
nah, they were whipping each other.
the preacher said, hey, Brother Hovind, let's go down to Rapid City, South Dakota. They've got a museum there with a bunch of dinosaur bones in it. I said, all right, man, I like dinosaurs, so let's go.
Okay, Kent says that he likes dinosaurs, but remember that time I asked him what a dinosaur is?
Yeah, he had no idea.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but I think if you like dinosaurs, you're going to at least have a basic idea of what a dinosaur is. Like, oh yeah, if you're recursive electrosmogger, yeah, the Kent was and his daughter Marlissa were on America's Funniest Home Videos. Yep. But Bent, you like, let's say, football, right?
Yes.
And if I were to ask you to describe the game of football, you could probably describe it in a way that people could differentiate between that game and other similar games like rugby.
Yeah, I could probably do that.
Yeah, okay. Now, if I said, hey, my favorite thing in the world is baseball, and you asked me, like, okay, well, tell me about that. I was like, well, you see, it's this game that people play, and, well, I never really thought about what it actually is as far as, like, you know, rules or where you play or who plays, but it's my favorite thing.
I wouldn't believe you.
Yeah, that's fair. You probably shouldn't. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we all piled in the cars and vans, and we drove down to Rapid City, South Dakota. We got down to this museum. It's called the School of Mines Museum in Rapid City, South Dakota. We walk in the door, and this older fellow met us, and he says, folks, would you like me to give you a tour? I'm a guide here.
That is a very cool mount of a mosasaur. I kind of want to go to this museum. That is a, yeah. Now that plesiosaur mount in the back looks like the neck might be a little bit more arched than is reasonable, but still. That's a pretty sweet mount.
We said, sure, that'd be great. The first place we stopped on the tour was the geologic time scale. They've got this chart all lit up behind glass. We stopped and we stood by that chart for a while. He said, now folks, this layer of rock right here is about 70 million years old. My daughter, Marlissa, said, sir, how do you know that layer is 70 million years old? He said, well, that's a good question, honey. We determine the age of the layers by the types of fossils they contain.
All right, I've heard this story. This is a story that there are probably nuggets of truth in this, but by and large, I am very confident did not happen. So we're taking a drink. Now, I do think that Marlissa might remember it this way, because as we've discussed before, human memory is very easy to fool, and it is entirely possible that by repetition of this story, Marlissa, Kent's daughter, now remembers it this way. But as we'll see, this story is not something that likely ever happened. I do think he went to the museum, though, because I do think those are probably his own pictures.
They're called index fossils, and this layer had dinosaur bones in it, so it must be 70 million years old.
Well, no, dinosaur isn't an index fossil. Index fossils have to be very specific. Dinosaur is not an index fossil.
She said, okay, thank you, sir. We walked around the other side. We're standing over here, and the guide said, now, folks, these bones right here are about 100 million years old. My daughter raised her hand again. She said, sir, how do you know how old those bones are? He said,
100 million years old. So that looks like a Mosasaurus or Tylosaurus. So let's... I'm pretty sure that this is not 100 years old. 100 million years old. Okay, maybe if it's at the very beginning. All right, fair enough. I guess Mosasaurus extends to like 99.6 million years ago. Hey, you know what? Fair enough. I'm not gonna knock Kent for that one. That's close enough. You know what, Kent? Sorry. Look, I'm not exactly a mosasaur expert, so I had a rather truncated view of their extensive during time, so... Savage Cobra, the cursorial angiosperm for $5 says, it took me under 15 seconds to find Union City, South Dakota. I guess Kent is wrong about it being impossible to find. Also, it was in Rapid City on Friday. Oh, cool. I'm going to give Kent a pass on that, in that he might have been referencing like an old street atlas or something, because remember, this is from like 20 years ago. Like Google Earth wasn't a thing. People were still like owning road atlases as like bound books that they put in their cars. So I'll give them a bit of a pass on that, because I don't want to like hold 20 years ago Kent to the standards of like current internet use 2023, because it's not fair, right? So
That's a good question, honey. We determine the age of the bones by which layer they come from. She said, excuse me, sir, when we were standing on the other side, you told me you knew the age of the layers by the bones, and now you're telling me you know the age of the bones by the layers. She said, isn't that circular reasoning? I thought, wow, a chip off the old block. That guy had the strangest look on his face. It was almost as if he were thinking.
yeah, see, this is the section that I don't think happened, because it's actually a pretty easy answer to talk about, right? So here's the answer that a guide would actually give if he were a competent guide, which I have no reason to think the guides at this museum aren't. Well, that's an interesting question. As it actually turns out, index fossils are only a rough guide. What we actually do to determine the age of all of these things is, after we get a good handle on the relative ages of these by stratigraphy, we then go in and we use objective radiometric dating to date igneous rocks that are found between these various layers. So for example, if we have an extrusive igneous rock layer, might be an ash layer, might be a rhyolite layer, might be a basalt layer, who knows? We'll take that into the lab and we'll test it to measure the age. And then when we have enough of these, we can bracket the ages of the sedimentary layers between the igneous layers such that we have a date range for them. And in fact, in some cases, because we can correlate this globally, we can get such fine gradation in these igneous rock datings that we can actually narrow down particular sedimentary rocks to within only a few million years. And when I said 100 million years, I was rounding and not including the margin of error. It's actually more like, say, 99 million years plus or minus 500,000 years. That's what an actual guide would say, because that's what's true.
Boom,
He looked at
roasted.
me. I wasn't about to help him.
I love that that's how Kent sees himself. That's Kent's self-image. Is like the most square-jawed, strapping individual. I'm just taking a drink for this. I can't with this cartoon. Goodness. And of course, you know, the other guy looks like, what's that actor?
Larry David.
Larry David, yeah. The other guy looks like Larry David with an even weaker chin. Because, of course, the guy has to look like a clown.
Yeah.
He looked at my daughter. He said, you know, you're...
Also, if you notice, he's not well-dressed, whereas Kent and his daughter are in this picture. This guy's just walking around in jeans and a t-shirt. Like, and not just a t-shirt, like an undershirt t-shirt. Right? And, yeah. Like, this whole thing is just very contrived.
right. That is circular reasoning.
No.
He said, I never thought of that
Did
before.
not say that. I'm taking a drink.
That poor fellow drove 50 miles one way that night to hear me preach in Union Center, South Dakota. The crowd swelled to 39.
I don't believe any of that happened.
We set up a chair in the aisle. Afterwards, we talked for almost an hour. He said, Dr. Hovind, do you mean all this stuff about geology I'm teaching is wrong? He said, I teach this stuff at the college.
Okay, I'm taking another drink. I just can't.
I'm sure all of this happened.
Anyone who knows enough to be teaching geology at a college knows enough to call bullshit on this.
Yeah.
Period.
This is clearly a story he's making up.
Yeah. Like, this is baby town geology, right? This is like, oh, hey, here's your freshman intro to geology course. That's all you need to figure out why Kent is talking nonsense. Unless he's teaching geology to preschoolers at the college for some reason, he definitely knows enough to know why this is not... everything Kent is saying is dumb.
I don't think preschoolers go to college, so...
Well, then it's probably not that, yeah. Yeah. I hate this bit so much. We're going to get a little bit more Kent in, then we're going to take a quick break.
I said, oh, no, sir, I like geology. You've learned the names of...
Kent, you do not like geology. You basically think that the entire thing is made up. You don't think the geologic column is like a valid model, something that even other young Earth creations are like, well, yeah, I mean, these layers objectively exist. You reject essentially every part of geology. And okay, I'm going to read these out of order, but yeah, as Vishanti says, and everyone clapped. Mothra emoji. Yeah, basically. He might as well have ended that story that way. Okay, sorry, I read that first because it was quick and it tied in, but as a Velociraptor Ryu, who got in first before this, for $5, says, Kent Hovind appears to have originated the Giga Chad meme template and the "and everybody clapped" cliche with the Godzilla. With the Giga drink for the Godzilla. Oh, they actually both fit so well, but because Vishanti's was shorter, I read to the end much quicker. So, sorry, Astro Ryu, that actually works really well too.
All the minerals, man, just that's a good trick, folks. There's 1,200 different minerals. Some have names about that long.
I mean, is that big number therefore God? Like, yeah, there's a lot of minerals, I guess. That's true, Kent. You know, I'll take a drink. It's true. There are a lot of minerals. Okay. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information, but sure.
You've learned the hardness test, the Rockwell test, the scratch test. I said, no, sir, that's all good. And by the way, if you're going to speak or do something on creation science, you need to learn some basic geology. For instance,
you need to learn some basic real science. Yes, Kent.
Yeah.
Different minerals have different hardnesses. Talc is the softest. It's the softest mineral there is. As a matter of fact, it's so soft, you can grind it up and make powder out of it.
Yes, hence talcum powder.
Anybody know what they call it when you do that? Talcum powder, right.
Okay.
Prediction. Drink for prediction.
Yeah, okay, I guess technically. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a quick break. In the meantime, you're going to be treated to the musical stylings of Bent Hovind. Bent, give a wave because it's your musical stylings.
Yes.
You didn't give a wave.
Oh, give a wave, I thought you said.
Yeah.
I don't know what I thought you said.
Okay.
I thought you said something else.
We're going to end the poll. Take a look. So, have you seen the movie Jurassic Park, named after the Jurassic layer? 88% said yes, 11% said no, with 116 votes. Thank you very much. Sorry about the no turtle option. So, in the meantime, I'm going to get myself a new... Well, I'm going to refresh this drink. It's not completely empty, but, you know. For $2, Savage Cobra, the cursorial angiosperm, says talc scratches the contents of Ken's skull. Yes. All right, we will be back in just a few minutes. Please stick with us. Yeah, see you in a few. Hello, everyone. We are back. We have a super chat to read for 616. That's 6.16. The original, or well, one of the marks of the beast. Asta Velissuraptor Ryu says, I have been informed that Kemingtonite is a mineral that exists. I assume it is drawn from the stones that are AIG. No, AIG, despite being a bag of dicks, they do not have that effect on anyone as far as I can tell.
Well, that's a relief.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And yes, that is in fact a real mineral. Okay, it is in fact a rock found only in Cummington. Hence the Cummingtonite. Yeah. It's a real thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right. So, now that I am back from the break, I'm going to go do my quick commercial spiel before we get right back into this. So, I want to say that this channel is... I'm just so happy that I get to do this, right? I'm making 2 live streams, a video every week. I'm getting early access videos to my patrons and channel members at what I consider to be a pretty blistering pace. But that is something that exists only because of the support of my channel members, patrons, people in the chat who super chat, people who send super thanks, things like that. If it were not for you guys, this channel would either not exist or it would exist at a much more modest level, right? There probably wouldn't be 2 streams a night. There certainly would not be a video, a premiere every week. It would be much more sparse. And that's if the channel existed at all. And so I want to, express my gratitude, but also say, hey, if you're enjoying this and you want to help the channel continue on, grow, help me do things like, afford food that isn't just spam and rice, then there are a number of great ways to help out. Some of the best ways are the Patreon and the channel memberships. In both cases, you get early access to videos, often 4 or 5 months in advance. So like right now, I released a video that probably isn't coming out until next year, right? Like we're talking like maybe February is when this video that I just put up for early access is probably going to come out. So there's hours and hours of stuff for early access. Now, Savage Cobra just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. When the people who got it come up, we're going to read those off. And so that went to Skeletor over 9,000, Ian Debunked, Cindy Bidwell Glaze, Drippy Liquids, Dragon Spartan 90 official. So there you go. Send some Cecil Tunicates, Fear Recursive Electrons Monger, not Pelagic Tunicates. Come on. But we're going to drink for those after I finish my little bit. So the Patreon starts at $1 a month, or you can get a 12% discount if you go annually. So basically, for just under $11 US, you can just have a year worth of early access and access to my special Discord server for supporters. The channel membership starts at $1.99 a month. There are higher tiers. At higher tiers, you unlock more rewards. I try as hard as I can to make it a worthwhile thing for people, right? I don't know if I always succeed, but at least the people who are long-term supporters seem to think I'm doing an okay job, and I appreciate that. Now, if a monthly or an annual pledge isn't your thing, but you still want to support the channel, there are still other ways. By the way, Bent also has a a Patreon linked in the description if you want to get like behind-the-scenes music stuff. But if you want to support, in addition to things like super chats and super thanks and buying memberships and things like that, there's also, I have a merch store in the description. You can buy some stuff from that. We've got like that blanket you can see in the background that has my face on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's on there. There's mugs, there's t-shirts. Bent, I think, has a mug and a t-shirt. I think Bob Knob has, a few other people might have pillows. There's phone cases, stickers, all sorts of stuff. Also, there's an Amazon wishlist if you just want to get something for me. I'll be honest, most of it is just for funsies, but there is some stuff to help the channel out. Like there's a new monitor because one of my monitors is kind of dying. There's like a recording booth, some stuff like that that's in there. And if none of that's right, if monetary support isn't something you can or you want to do, that's absolutely fine. Please just like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Put comments on my videos, share my videos with friends, family, enemies, I don't know, of the people that you would know. And also, watch a few of my videos in a row if you can. Steve Areno sends 5 pelagic tunicates for $2, which is gross, but I do appreciate the super chat. Now, let's drink 5 times for those 5 new members. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Oh, that was a fair bit. Okay, here we go.
The hardest one is which one?
Diamond.
Hardest mineral. Diamond. I don't have a diamond, or I'd show you, but...
Does that count as a prediction?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We'll drink for it. Yay, Kent knows about the Mohs scale.
Diamond is hardness of 10. Talc is hardness of 1. Everything in between has a number between 1 and 10, obviously. For instance, your fingernail is about a 3.
Okay, sure. It says like, it looks like a 2.5 on there, but whatever. It looks like calcite is a 3 or a 3.2. I don't know, whatever. I don't really care about this.
So with your fingernail, you could scratch talc. You couldn't scratch a diamond.
That's true, Kent. Your fingernail cannot scratch a diamond and it can scratch talc. We'll take a drink. Good job, Kent. I don't know what the point of this is, but okay.
A diamond would scratch your fingernail because it's harder.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever one scratches the other one, that's the hardest one.
Harder one. It's comparative when comparing 2 things. You can use a superlative with 3 or more instances of something.
Come on, Ken. You taught high school. You should know better.
But he didn't teach high school grammar, to be fair.
He does speak English, though. To
Well,
some degree.
yeah, to some degree. Yeah, when the judge asked him if he spoke English, his response was, to some degree. Zero says, what if you have a lot of fingernails? I don't think that affects their hardness.
So, for instance, a pocket knife is a hardness, can you read that, about a 5.5? So, a pocket knife, its hardness of 5.5 will scratch a penny, which is a hardness of 3. Copper is, that's how hard it is. They rate it 1 to 10. Whereas a diamond would scratch a pocket knife because the diamond is harder.
Yup.
And that's the hardness scale, it's called.
Or the Mohs scale, you know, for those of us who know what things are called.
This is one of the tests they use to determine, if you find a mineral, you say, what is it? Well, one thing is to find out the hardness. Another is find out the density, you know, how compact it is and stuff like that.
Yes, Kent. In order to determine what something is, you'd figure out its physical properties.
Mm-hmm.
You figured it out. You did the thing that most people have figured out by, like, age 3.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, there's a lot of different minerals.
Yes.
So this professor, I said, no, sir, you've learned a lot of good things about geology. You learned the names of all the minerals, the hardness test.
I very much doubt that anyone has memorized the names of all the minerals that exist.
I have.
That's the kind of thing that even if you're like a geology PhD, you have like references for.
All this, I said, yes, sir, that's all good. No problem there. But as far as the layers being different ages, I said, yes, sir, it's all baloney.
Okay, it can't actually be baloney, even under young Earth young Earth creationism interpretation, right? So we have Earth, right? And it has multiple layers. The lower layers would have to be deposited first because you can't deposit something, just suspend it in the water column and then deposit something under it. Now, the best you can do is say, okay, I think that the age estimates are actually wildly off and that they should be truncated. Okay, sure, you can say that. Great. But what you can't say is that there's no difference in the age when you're going up vertically. It's physically impossible. And I know that Kent has never managed to get this through his very thick and yet very soft skull. But that's just how it is. I feel like Kent's skull is just a solid marshmallow.
I think the air inside his brain is different.
Like this air in the space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those layers are not different ages. It's all based on what we call circular reasoning. Let me cover this real quick and we'll take a break. Circular reasoning.
Oh,
This fellow said in about 1830, Charles Lyell, some other guys, independently developed a biostratigraphic technique. That's a fancy word for a geologic column. For dating Cenozoic deposits based on, watch this, they dated the deposits based on the proportions of living and extinct species of mollusk shells.
Okay.
So if you find some clam shells in a layer of rock, you would say, oh, you know, to change from this kind of clam to this kind of clam would take millions of years. So
No, Charles. Oh my goodness. I'm taking another drink. We're going to talk more about Charles Lyell.
Ken's gonna give you a headache.
Charles Lyell, for most of his adult life, did not accept evolution. It wasn't until late in life, around the time of the publishing of the final 6th edition of Origin of Species, that Charles Lyell begrudgingly came around to say, okay, yeah, maybe there's something to this. Okay. So, at this point, he was not talking about changes in clams. He was more sympathetic to what's called progressive creation. Now, progressive creation is more or less defunct at this point. I've never heard of any living person who believes in progressive creation. I can't say they don't exist. There's people who believe just about anything. So I'm sure that there's a progressive creationist out there, and if that's you, I am not trying to invalidate your existence by saying this. However, as far as I can tell, it's essentially a defunct idea. But the idea is that God, throughout the vast time of the Earth has been around, because it's an old Earth idea, has continuously sort of like updated the fauna of the Earth, right? So at one point he was like, there's God sitting up there on some cloud or something, I don't know. I'm just being silly. I know that most Christians don't think of God as physically sitting on a cloud, fair. But he's like, you know what? Dinosaurs, that's cool. I'm going to do that. So he makes a bunch of dinosaurs. But then later on, he's like, okay, dinosaurs were cool, but mammals. And so, he kind of phases out the dinosaurs and replaces them with mammals. Now, this could get much more granular in the sense of like different species of clam, right? So God could be like, okay, I like this particular species of clam. This is cool. But then later on, he's like, okay, they've had their time. New species of clam. Poof. New species of clam exists. A Trail Mix for $5 says, what if I put my fingernails in a Huang Whirlwind HPHT cubic press synthetic diamond making machine? Diamond, Mothra, diamond. Well, first, we're going to take a drink. Second, I don't recommend it, but I guess like if it presses your nail into, like it presses the carbon into a diamond, I would argue that as an artificial diamond, it is no longer a nail, as in a fingernail. It is now a diamond that was made from the carbon in your fingernail. So I would still say that your fingernail is softer than a diamond. That's what I would say. My Unfinished Journey for $2 says, isn't Hugh Ross a progressive creationist? Okay, so I know he's an old Earth creationist. I don't know if he's technically a progressive creationist, so that's a good point. Yeah, I don't know. That's maybe he is, in which case I was very off about whether or not I know of any progressive creationists. So yeah, that's a good point. I actually don't know. So here's one of the problems, right? That's the Reasons to Believe ministry. And they're super vague about what they actually believe about life history. Like, nailing down what they actually think happened in terms of life history is just like nailing Jello to the wall. They take virtually no firm stances other than evolution wrong. And also Neanderthals not human. Like, so yeah, it's hard for me to pin that down. I'm not really sure. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
Exactly.
Oh, Charles Lyell, right. Progressive creation. So, what he was seeing, though, is that, so if you assume progressive creation, that means the closer in time to now that you get, the more likely you are to find animals that are still alive. And so throughout the Cenozoic, we have the emergence of increasing number of mollusks, like bivalves, snails, and stuff like that, that are still identifiably alive today. Now, this fits both with an evolutionary paradigm as well as with progressive creation. So Charles Lyell was not assuming evolution, he was assuming creation, just not the kind that Kent likes. And yeah, now the very fact that you can trace out living versus extinct mollusks as a proportion is a bit problematic if you want to say that all of this is done by the flood. Now, if you don't, you also still have to answer the question, okay, where were the modern species after the flood? Because a lot of creationists will say that the whole Cenozoic is post-flood. Okay, well, why weren't there more modern species at the beginning of that? And why did so many of the now extinct species go extinct? What happened? Why did the diversity decline so fast, but then somehow, what? New modern species evolved in that time? I thought you guys were the anti-evolutionists. So, no matter which way you shake it, yeah, it's not good news for young Earth creationism. It's only really, the physical evidence is really only compatible with very special pleading form of progressive creation or just evolution. Now, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, who's been a member for 18 months and is at the diabsid level, thank you very much, said, "You said we need a lot more members for an emoji. Has YouTube gotten any better about telling you exactly how many?" Not a whole lot better, but the numbers have stabilized a little bit in the last few weeks, so I think it's probably going to be roughly accurate. But there are a bunch of AIGers, a bag of dicks, a Mothra, a Godzilla, a Kent, me, a Get Bent. It's like all the emojis. So we're gonna take a drink and we're gonna take a look at the members. Okay, so let me just open up my YouTube studio. Click on the right numbers of buttons. Okay, so now this is going to be off by about 5 or so. I'm currently at about 261 members. It's probably closer to 266. And my next emoji should be at 350. So basically, I probably need about like 90 plus members in order to get a new emoji.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Hey, 2 rounds of 50 memberships could do it. Not that I expect that, because that
Fingers
is...
crossed.
Yeah. I mean, I won't reject it, but I'm not expecting it.
This must be millions of years older than this one. They start off with the assumption that evolution happened and that the clams...
No, they did not start with the assumption that evolution happened because, again, Charles Lyell was, for most of his career, definitively anti-evolution. Now, he wasn't anti-Darwin. He liked Darwin. He just disagreed. He thought Darwin made interesting arguments. He encouraged Darwin to publish. He was a fan of the ideas in terms of, like, their things to think and talk about, but he didn't agree with them. Now, Dr. Tapioca Weasel just gifted 10 memberships. Thank you very much. They went to April Van Ryn, Christopher Kennedy Atheist, Bio Alley, Dustin Carroll, The Fallen, Alerted Bridge 97, Vesta Freya, Rodent No Last Name, Snorefoot, and Izaheb. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, please look. If I ever pronounce your name wrong, please let me know. But let's take 10 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna take a quick break. Yep. Okay. 5, 6. Ooh, I'm getting some brain freeze. Ooh.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's rough. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, I can feel my sinuses like closing in on themselves. Not. Ooh. Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
Slowly changed from one kind to another, and then they dated the layers based upon the clamshells found in those layers. The article continues, strangely, little effort has been made to test this assumption. This failure leaves the method vulnerable to circularity.
Okay, I'm going to check this. Let's see. Can we find this? Geology Volume 8, 1980. Oof, we might not be able to. All right, but let's type this citation into Google and see what happens. Okay. Lyellian curves in paleontology, possibilities and limitations, geology. Of course, I spelled limitations wrong. That's okay. Lyellian curves. Okay. Yeah, it actually does come up. Okay. That's cool. So see what it says. That is a paywall. Can we check it here? Is that going to be not a paywall? No, that is still a paywall. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to go ahead and definitely pay the full paywall here, right? I'm just doing that right now. I'm definitely not going to pirate this by going to sci-hub.se and pasting the DOI link into the reference. I'm not doing that. That is not okay. Do not do that. Okay, they're not accepting my payment method here. Yeah, so let me see if I can use an alternate payment method. Okay, that's not working. I'm going to try one of the other options that has, like, you know, payment options for this. I'm definitely not pirating. Definitely seeing if they accept my payment method. Yeah. I don't think I can access this. They're just
how much you pay.
Yeah, they just don't want to take my payment methods. Apparently, it's what I'm finding. JSTOR, I can't use JSTOR. I can preview some of it. Yeah, it's one page. Thanks, JSTOR. Let me see if I can pay JSTOR. This is the last one I'm going to try to pay. Okay, it looks like they took it. Let's double check. Yup. Okay.
Nice.
So let's Control F. I'm not sharing the screen because, you know, you guys didn't pay for this. And I definitely did pay for it. I did not pirate it. I can promise. I definitely did not go to SCI-HUB, not underscore, dash, .se. I definitely didn't do that. So the place I didn't go is, I'm gonna paste it in the chat here. That's specifically where I didn't go. Don't go there. Don't click on that link. That's just for example, where you don't go. Okay. Now that we have that out of the way, do not do that. Strangely, comma, oh, wait, it's not in here? That's weird. I can select things. Yeah, that works. Little effort? Nope. Huh. This quote just doesn't seem to be in this paper. Let's double check the title here. Linear curves and mean taxonomic durations, Craig. Oh, this is not the right person. Darn it. All right, fine. I can't find it. Sorry. I was hoping we could find it. Doesn't look like I could. That's unfortunate. Strawberry, paying member for 4 months and is at the amniote level, says, using my free chat to tell young Earth creationists to let Charles Lyell rest in peace. It genuinely disgusts me how much they disrespect this man and his legacy. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Especially the degree to which they just erase the man's Christianity. In an effort to just denigrate his work. That's actually one of the things that really bugs me. Because, like, look, I'm not here telling you, like, oh yeah, Christianity is the one true religion. That's not what I'm here for. But when fellow Christians just ignore the fact that he was a Christian because it doesn't help them, I find that to be particularly gross. So, yeah.
In other words, circular reasoning. Use one to prove the other. Back and forth.
Oh man, if only we had an objective way to determine the dates of things, like
radiometric dating. Why not use that?
Yes, exactly. And you know what? We do use that. That is used. Weird,
Why is
right?
Kent not mentioning that? That's strange.
Yeah, that is strange.
Here's a textbook, page 306, they say. You should date the rocks by the fossils. Look what it says in yellow. The layers of rock can be dated
This is, once again, is a textbook for babies.
by the types of fossils they contain.
Vandali 1998, who's been a member for 35 months as at the amniote level. My goodness, thank you so much. Says, Godzilla, if this source is behind a paywall, how did Kent ever get this? Because I doubt he's smart enough to do it whatever way you definitely didn't. So first, yeah, we're going to take a drink for the Godzilla. So creationists have created numerous books that are just full of quote mines. Right? Out of context quotes with the citations in a book. And it's the fact that those books exist is on its own one of the most intellectually dishonest things I've ever encountered. But they exist, right? And I'm pretty sure he got this quote either from such a book or by reading another creationist and just stealing this quotation. I highly doubt he went anywhere near the original source. So, yeah.
Now, what does that say? You date the rocks by the fossils.
Okay, hold
On
up,
page
Kent.
306, they
We're
say
going to take a look at that and
you
read
should
it
date
ourselves.
the rocks by the fossils. Look what it says in yellow.
Okay. Scientists have determined the relative times of appearance and disappearance of many kinds of organisms from the locations of their fossil in the sedimentary rock layers. Okay. So remember, relative times, because we can see the sequence going up. Often, many fossils are found together at the same time, location, probably because all the organisms died together in a flood, volcanic eruption, or some other disaster. One site discovered in China consists of sediments of an ancient seafloor dating back 570 million years old. So, scientists have determined the relative times of appearance. Again, this is just the law of superposition, right? It is physically impossible for a younger layer to be deposited below an older layer. If you have an older layer that is in the wrong sequence, then you will find evidence of folding. So here we go. So earlier in this, it says, as long as the stack remains undisturbed, the oldest paper is on the bottom. We're talking about laying paper one on top of another. And the newest is on the top. In the same way, particles of weathered rocks settle in layers like the layers in a cake and form sedimentary rocks. Fossils found in the undisturbed lower layers of sedimentary rocks are usually older than those in the undisturbed upper layers. Yeah, that's just physically how settling works. So this is not just dating the fossils by the rock. This is after we've determined relative dates. We can use these as signposts. Got a couple things to read. Velociraptor Ryu 666, that's 6.66 US dollars. The other mark of, or sign of the beast, sorry, says, yes, the quotes on random note cards. Perfect source. Definitely not an AIG move to use them as if they were real. True. Border Barbecue, who's been a member for 9 months and is at the amulet level, says, reminder to like the video. Also, build a wall of pelagic tunicates. That sounds so gross.
Sounds great.
Ugh. Are you sure? Would you like to walk into a wall of gelatinous flesh?
I don't want to walk into any wall.
Well, would you want a wall in your house made of gelatinous flesh?
Yeah, as long as it's pelagic tunicates.
Ugh, disgusting.
Maybe, but I don't care.
The layers of rock can be dated by the types of fossils they contain. Now, what does that say? You date the rocks by the fossils. On the next page, it said, scientists have determined the relative times of appearance and disappearance of many kinds of organisms from the locations of their fossils in sedimentary rock layers.
Yeah, but remember that thing that I read earlier that explained how relative dating works via the law of superposition?
Mm-hmm.
You notice how he's just kind of skipping over that part?
He's skipping over that, and it doesn't mention dating the fossil by the rock at all in anything that's highlighted either.
Yeah, weird.
So it sounds like Uncle Kent, no relation, lying again.
Oh, that seems very far-fetched. I can't believe Uncle Kent would lie to us. How dare he?
And I think that's a Trojan source, because it's not saying what he says it's saying.
Oh. But does it? Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'll go with it. That sounds like a Trojan source. Yeah, sure. All right, here we go.
Ooh, now they're telling us that you date the fossils by the rocks. On the last page, they told us to date the rocks by the fossils, and now you date the fossils by the rocks. It is circular reasoning.
By the way,
when you don't understand it.
I forgot to mention, Bent, why are you wearing a tutu?
Because your chat is awesome.
What did they do?
They donate a whole bunch of money.
Yeah. We're currently 83 away from another tutu. We could do it. It's
possible.
Olivia Williams, who's been a member for 17 months, is at the Tetrapod level, says, hey, I have that. King Ghidorah. And we'll take a drink for Ghidorah. Okay, here we go.
The intelligent layman has long suspected circular reasoning in the use of rocks to date fossils and fossils to date rocks. The geologist has never bothered to think of a good reply.
Okay, I'm actually familiar with this. We're not going to look it up right now, so we're not going to drink for Trojan source. But he then later goes on to talk about the fact that it's not circular reasoning and why not. And what do you think his primary reason for saying that it's not circular reasoning is, Bent?
Because they use radiometric dating.
There you go. How did you ever guess?
I'm a very good guesser.
You are a very good guesser. That's true. I've seen firsthand. Bent is, in fact, an excellent guesser.
Not perfect, but
Yeah.
pretty close.
Feeling the explanations are not worth the trouble as long as the work brings results. This guy said, it cannot be denied from a strictly philosophical standpoint that geologists are here arguing in a circle.
Yeah, if you just go with that. Just the index fossils dating rocks and rocks being dated by index fossils. Good thing that's not what happens.
The succession of organisms has been determined by a study of their remains.
Oh my goodness, Strawberry Ping just donated 20 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Wow. Thank you very much. They went to W.S. Wordsman, Cross-Platform Adventures, The Gay Bead, Hirvensalo, I think, Steve Austin, Zach Brannigan, Up Madman, Lucifer Almighty, Gosh of Heckfire, Shorty Jack 27278. Let's see. Oh, the thing is scrolling away from me. Come on. Devin Usselton? Sorry. Bloody Hatter, Kristen Mills, Slack Black, Liska Day Babbitt, Skeletor over 9,000. Nope, that's not a new membership. That's an old one. Matt White, Old Man Joe. Let's see. Board Emporia. Nope, that's not a new one. Cricket Vulture. Sorry. Ender Riolu Girl. I hope. The Gofinator, and I think that's it. Wow, thank you very much. That is very much appreciated. Let's drink 20. Oh, and hey, we just hit the tutu number. That's the tutu number. Very excellent, everybody. It's still not enough for me to buy you pizza, though, Bent.
Not yet.
We'll take some drinks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Hold on. Yep, I'm good. Oh, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, okay. 11, 12, 13, 14. Hold on. Quick other break. Oh my goodness, my sinuses. Oh.
Oh, no.
Was that 13 that I just did?
We did 14.
14? Okay. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19. And 20.
A lot of drinks.
Oh, yeah, that is. I am. Ooh, my head. Okay. I suffer for your enjoyment. I'm like the suffering servant.
Nice.
Maybe.
Remains embedded in the rocks, and the relative ages of the rocks are determined by the remains of the organisms that they contain. Even Encyclopedia Britannica can figure it out. It's circular argument. Use one to prove the other. Ever since William Smith at the beginning of the 19th century, fossils have been and still are the best and most accurate method of correlating and dating the rocks in which they occur.
Kind of, once you keep in mind that you can absolutely date and then bracket within that, and then use the fossils within those brackets, with the caveat that if you find something that's out of place based on the radiometric dating, that you then have to reassess what counts as a index fossil. Like, with like 8 or 9 caveats, then I'll accept that. But here's the thing. Those caveats are probably elsewhere in this text. And I'm not going to check every single one of these because, like, I don't think I'm going to be able to find new scientists online without having to pay through the nose for it. And I already paid for the wrong paper, you guys, because I didn't go to sci-hub.se, where you can pirate plenty of scientific papers, most of them, basically. Don't do that, because you're taking the food out of the mouths of the children of those journal editors. And you're taking that food out of their mouths and tossing it in the dirt. That's what you're doing.
Rude.
Yeah. How dare you?
I'm sorry.
Apart from very modern examples, which really are archaeology, by the way, it's a good time to point out, archaeology is dealing with the past few thousand years. If you're going to dig up an Indian civilization, that you're an archaeologist. Whereas if you want to get into anthropology, the study of ancient things, then that would be an anthropologist, which is mostly an art form, not a science.
Okay, let's... I hate this so much. Oh, okay, for $2, Strawberry Pain says, I'm sorry I drive you to drinking so much, Dapper. No, I appreciate it. Look, here's the thing, right? I love my chat. I love when they're generous. And sure, sometimes I get a brain freeze. But you know what? I would not trade this job for pretty... Look, it would take a lot of money for me to trade this job out for anything else. And I mean a lot. Because I love doing this. I love chat. I love it when we have member. I love all of it. Sure, there are frustrations and they happen and it's okay. But overall, this is great. I wouldn't change anything about this. But let's... Oh, my goodness. Raptor for $20 says, as an anthropology major, anthropology is not the study of ancient things. What the hell, Kent? No, that's what we're about to start talking about. Okay, so we're gonna talk about that right now. So, archaeology is the study of the products of humans, right? So, artifacts. What are those? Those are things created by humans, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So that includes things like middens or trash heaps, buildings, tools, art, to some degree even human remains if it's recent enough. Anthropology is the study of humans broadly in terms of things like their cultural context, right? Now there's multiple parts of anthropology. So physical anthropology studies like the physical evolution of humans, but cultural anthropology studies like how cultures develop, change, adapt to the needs of varying forces and stressors and whatnot, right? Paleontology is the study of the remains of organisms that are 10,000 years old or older by basically like fiat is where we draw that line, right? Geology is just the study of the rocks. So Kent is just wrong about what paleontology, well, he doesn't even mention paleontology, but he's kind of right about archaeology in that it's the study of human-made artifacts, right? And there's an overlap, right? So let's say you're a physical anthropologist. So you're studying things like the evolution of humans over time. Well, that's going to involve archaeological stuff, right? Because human ancestors are associated with different kinds of tools and archaeological record, right? We have a Paleolithic archaeological record that interacts with physical anthropology. But if you're studying modern humans in modern cultures, you're just as much an anthropologist as someone who's studying like Homo habilis. So Kent is just completely wrong about this. Vandeli 1998 for $5 says, if it wasn't for chat, Dapper would have to be more sober than he is while listening to Kent. That's true. Strawberry Pain says, I actually do feel bad about your sinuses. Dapper, look, my sinuses are currently recovering. I in no way have any kind of grudge. So, here we go.
That's study of things that are supposed to be millions of years old. Okay. This guy said, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils.
I also cannot find that because radiometric dating is done primarily on igneous rocks, right? Fossils, with very few exceptions, are not found in igneous rocks, and even when they are, the fossils themselves aren't igneous. So the only examples I can think of are ashfall fossil beds. So there's a famous place in the United States. I'm going to double check where it is because I don't... Look, there's been a bit of gin and I don't want to get this wrong for you guys. So ashfall beds is a state park in Nebraska. There you go. So this is a Cenozoic thing. So we're talking about, the last 66 million years or so. And it's got a bunch of stuff, like I think it's got a bunch of rhinos and things like that. And this is a volcanic ash fall. So ash is a weird thing, right? So this is in what's basically like tuff, which is what you call rock made from volcanic ash that falls through the air. So tuff is made from volcanic rock that sort of falls like sedimentary rock. So, it comes down as particulates from the air, forms a layer, and that layer can be compacted into rock. But as it comes down, it was also suffocating a bunch of these animals. So you can directly date the ash layers, but the bones embedded in the ash themselves can't be directly dated because they don't have the same isotopic ratios as the surrounding igneous ash. So of course you can't directly date the fossils by taking a sample of the fossil. But if you find an ash layer completely surrounding a fossil and you date the ash layer, how much different can the fossil actually possibly be? I would argue more or less zero.
Not that different.
Yeah, like I don't like within the margin of error of radiometric dating, it's going to be zero. So yeah, and in the other cases, like where I was talking earlier about how you can bracket sedimentary layers, but by dating multiple different like extrusive, igneous layers, then you don't have to directly date the fossils. You date the rocks around them, and that brackets your ages. That's why we say, oh, this is 150 million years, give or take 2 million years, because when we've bracketed below and above it, it gives us a range of about 2 million years, and we can't be sure within that range where this actual fossil falls. But we still have that bracketed range. It can't be outside that range. So Kent is just, again, cherry picking to say that, oh, well, they're not really radiometrically dating the fossils directly, which, yeah, generally true enough, just doesn't help him.
That's an interesting quote here. In other words, they don't date fossils by their carbon dating or potassium argon dating. They date them by the geologic position.
No, Kent, that's not what's being said. You put it in there yourself, directly on the fossil. They do date them radiometrically by bracketing, right? If you say, okay, this layer above this fossil is 160 million years old, and this layer below the fossil is 170 million years old, how old is the fossil? Between 160 and 170 million years old. What other options are there? Also, okay, hold on. There's been a name change. Okay, I have to expand this. As the archaeologists study ancient... Oh, it's scrolling. I don't know what it says. Oh, it's been cut off and it's not updating in my other... I hate this. I'm sorry, Esther, I'm not sure exactly what all of it says. Please let me know. But you said, I'm going to have to lie down after that one. Yeah, no, that's perfectly understandable. And then Starbury, Dapper Sinus Pain, has gifted 5 more memberships. They went to Queen Necra the second, Gamer Dude 687, Fritz Braun, Paul DeCourt, and Thor Rasmussen. So here we go. 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And hey, we're actually a good way towards getting to that next emoji. That's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, where was Kent? Here we go.
Which layer did you find it in? Oh, well, then it's so many million years old. We'll get into a few more quotes on circular reasoning right after the break, and then show you some of the polystrata fossils that have been found right after our break. All right, let's talk some more about circular reasoning and how the geologic...
Hey, Ben, we're less than $70 away from me buying you a pizza.
Yes. I'm very hungry.
I joked with Ben earlier that I would buy him a pizza if we made a certain amount of money. And it was just a joke. But now we're actually, possibly in range.
The column is tied in. This author said...
Bent is starving. You can't tell because it's not very obvious, but actually Bent hasn't eaten in days, as far as I can tell. Because I haven't watched him eat in days. So, as far as I know, he just hasn't had any food in days.
It's been a while.
Has it been a long road?
It's been a long road getting from there to here.
Okay.
radiometric dating would not have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first.
I mean, that's actually that's kind of true, right? Like, how would you know whether or not you were getting accurate dates back if you didn't have a relative dating, right? So what you're getting back from these rocks are just ratios of elements, right? So you're getting like this much potassium, this much argon, of various different nuclides, right? So if you did not have the law of superpositions already established and a relative dating, how would you know whether or not these ratios were meaningful? And eventually you might be able to figure it out. And of course, this is from 1976. So I guess we'll just drink for like the half-century old freaking citation. But yeah, the law of superposition is what guides the idea that we can figure out whether or not these ratios are meaningful. And the fact that they line up so that you get the ratios predicted from the combination of... So you basically get the directionality predicted from relative dating when you then check these ratios is cross-confirmation that the relative dating is correct, and it then supports you with actual numbers that you can use for absolute dating. But if you didn't originally have the law of superposition giving you the relative dates, it would be hard to say whether or not these ratios corresponded to anything. So there is some truth to this. Vandali 1998 for $2 says, $100 pizza, hopefully the taste is worth the price. Oh, man.
It would be.
It definitely would be, yeah. All right. Where's my mouse? There it is. Here we go.
What he means by this is, you can't tell the age of a fossil with radioactive dating, like carbon dating.
Okay. Kent, other than the most recent fossils, no one is carbon dating fossils. No one's carbon dating dinosaur fossils. No one's carbon dating trilobites. Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm just going to take a drink for like, oh, no, it's carbon dating these fossils. Yeah, no crap. They ain't got no carbon in them. Goodness.
You must first know the approximate age from the geologic column, which is why...
No, Kent, you can't get anything but the relative ages. And Steve Marino just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. All right. They went to the Talus? I'm not sure. Please help me out if I get your name wrong. Rohan Orton, Curbsy, Biggest Doggus, and is that 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and Nathan Austin. All right, let's take 5 drinks. Here we go. Coming up. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Oh, and goodness, Savage Cobra, the cursorial angiosperm, just gifted 5 more. Wow. Ben, they want you to have a free pizza.
So do I.
So let's see. Those went to Alex Markle. Okay, I'm almost certainly going to butcher this. Pichettino? Pichettino. I'm going to go with a super stereotypical Italian. Pichettino. Orion Fritz, Nita, and Virgil DeComing. I'm sure I butchered so many of those, and I'm so sorry. Again, please let me know if I did. But we're going to take 5 more drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Oof. Yeah, I'm going to need a new liver.
They generally will not date, unless you trick them into doing it, they won't date dinosaur bones with carbon dating.
Yeah, because it's no longer organic material for the most part.
Carbon dating doesn't work past, what, 20,000 years or so?
In ideal conditions, it's more like 50,000, but yeah. Like, there are...
Dinosaurs lived how many millions of years ago?
Like, well, unless we count birds, like 66 million.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
How many orders of magnitude is Kent off by?
I don't do the math for me real quick, because Strawberry, Dapper Sinus Pain, there it is, for $5 says, pizza for Bent! Yeah, we're currently $12 away from me buying Bent a pizza. because I made that promise.
That's
I'm gonna.
so
I mean, I'm
close.
gonna buy me a pizza too if this happens. Actually, I'm gonna buy me a pizza either way. The question is, does Bent get one too?
Or do I starve, chat?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
the
what
other
you
option.
want?
Is Bent starves? He's gonna waste away.
Because they assume dinosaurs lived 70 million years ago,
66, but sure, whatever.
and carbon dating only goes back 30 or 40,000 years, and so they won't even do it.
No, Ken, it's not that that's the reason, right? It's that when you find a dinosaur fossil, it's generally not even the original organic material, so there's no point. Carbon dating only works on previously living material, right? Because the way it works is there's a certain amount of carbon-14 that just kind of generally naturally exists in the air. Now, Trail Mix for $2 says, please drink responsibly. Thank you very much. So, as a living creature, in most environments, you're taking in carbon that was absorbed in the air by plants, and now either you are the plant or you're an herbivore. Now, if you're an herbivore, you're not going to be absorbing this carbon on a time scale that's significant to radiocarbon dating. Now, Gupdu3 just gave $2 that says just a bunch of pizza emoji, and then Trail Mix added 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, and they went to Masked Wolf, Dragoness, James B, Civ Master, Farron Salas, Bruce Davis, Barium Selenided, I hope, Rogue, ABC Afchen, Jay Bellinger, and Greg Powell. All right, we'll take 10 drinks for that, and we'll read a few more super chats because a few more have come in after that. Okay, hold on. That was 10. Was that 10? Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, give me a second. Okay, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Ooh, okay. Let's see. That's the archaeologist study ancient things review. It's for $12.50. Says, buy him a pizza. My brain is dead, so I don't care how my wallet feels. Yes, it's an AIG move to my wallet, but I don't care anymore because anthropologists apparently study ancient things only. Yeah. For $4.99 US, Atomic Squirrel says, fine, I need to feed the hungry. Sean for $5 says, unless you trick them, a funny way to say lie for Jesus, Godzilla, Ben deserves a pizza. Take a drink for that, Godzilla. And then Dr. Tapioca Weasel for $2 says, so how far from an emoji? At this point, we should probably be like, I want to say 20, but I don't trust that. So I'm going to go ahead and say 40 to be safe. But I'm not positive because, YouTube likes to lie to me. Is basically what that is. So, yeah. Okay. So we're basically about to wrap this up, right? So we're going to start going ahead and wrapping this up. Bent, do you have anything that you want to tell the people about before we get out of here?
Yeah, I have music, and there's a link in the description where you can download it. And I have a Patreon and an Amazon wishlist if you feel so inclined to help out.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look ahead into the future using my psychic powers of being the guy who runs the channel and therefore decides what's happening in the future. It's one of the easiest psychic powers to acquire. All right, so on Thursday, we are doing the 4th part of the David Menton series. That's going to cover up the David Menton. Now, on the 16th, I have just reconfirmed earlier today with Dr. Kip Davis. Dr. Kip Davis, an expert in the origins of Judaism and Jewish Hebrew texts, including especially the Dead Sea Scroll, which is one of his specialties, is going to be coming on with us to talk about Job 40 and the identity of Behemoth. So we're going to talk to an actual expert in ancient Hebrew about what we can know about Leviathan from ancient Hebrew sources and whether or not it's reasonable to say it was a sauropod. I am greatly looking forward to this. I think it's going to be great. Now, Vishanti has been invited. I don't know if she will be well enough to attend. If she is going to be there, I assume. Because as you know, Vishanti has been under the weather, and she has said it in chat before. She got COVID.
Ooh.
Yeah, her first time getting
That's rough.
COVID. So, yeah, it is rough. But she's on the mend, and so I'm hoping that she can be there. If she can't, though, that's perfectly understandable, and I hope you feel better as soon as possible. Yeah, as Vishanti says, I try. Yeah. Look, if you can't be here, both Dr. Davis and I understand. In fact, I talked to him about that myself. I said, look, I don't know exactly how she's going to be feeling. You know, I'm in contact with her, but, you know, not going to hold her to that. Now, on the 19th, the plan is currently Matt with Maddie. We're going to continue looking at a interview with Raw Matt, the ordained Essene Raw Matt, which go check the last episode of Matt with Maddie. So yeah. All right. Well, that's as far ahead as I want to look. That is going to cover it again. We're going to be doing Power Rangers in the Discord. So if you are a member or a channel or a patron, make sure that you connect your Discord account to the way that you gain that. So either to your Patreon or to your YouTube account. That will automatically add you to the supporters only Discord. And you can come watch Power Rangers Lost Galaxy with us right after this. And by right after this, I mean, like, you know, we'll be a couple minutes or two. But, you know,
minutes.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes.
Yeah. With that, I hope to see all of you on Thursday. Thank you so much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. You are helping to put my hypothetical children that don't currently exist through college, eventually, someday, maybe. Yeah, that's assuming that I have kids and that they then go to college. Neither of which is a guarantee. It's hard to find a Mrs. Ceratosaurus, is one of the things I'm just going to point out there. Yeah, there's not that many, aren't that many options for Ceratosaurus babies. So I hope to see all of you on Thursday, and those of you who are members or patrons, I'll see you over in the Discord server. We're going to get out of here. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Denny5252, Eleron Teller, Thorhavara, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babby, Monkey They Them, Mrs. Spexinder, The Venerable Bede, Sphincter of Doom, and Star Runner. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.